Hey everyone, and welcome to my Comforting Reads recommendations list. I'm having a pretty stressful month and a pretty stressful year, to be honest. There's a lot going on. My kitchen's being redone and I'm just very stressed right now, which means I'm kind of gravitating towards some books that I find quite comforting. So what I thought I'd do today is actually share them with you in case you need some comfort in your life as well while reading. So let's get going. First thing I have is Pages & Co. by Anna James, and this is such a love letter to books in the sense that it is a love letter to the power of books and reading and readers and libraries and the written word. It is such a love letter to all of those things, and it is just so comforting to read because it is all about the power of a book and everything else, because we're following Tilly, who can essentially what's called book wander, which means that she can read herself into a book and then read herself out of a book and then also read other characters out of books so she can have conversations with them, all of this kind of thing. And it is such a sweet, cute series. When I was reading it, it felt like such a hug to read it. There's also illustrations throughout here as well, if I can find some good ones. Like this, it's all really quite whimsical and light-hearted. There's lots of like literary references in here, like to Alice in Wonderland, Sherlock Holmes, people like this, and it is just such a really lovely series, and it just makes me feel comforted whenever I read it. It's like being in a bookshop. You know, where you just feel comfortable because you're in a bookshop and surrounded by books. That's what this book makes me feel 100%. I then also have The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and this just feels like such a hug in the sense that you're just following these characters in their lives and they're just doing their normal day-to-day things. They just happen to be in space and they're doing like a space mission essentially, but it's not like overly space based, I guess you could say. It's very much like they just happen to be in space essentially. They've all got their own problems, but they all get solved. They all work together to solve these problems, all of this kind of thing. Yes, there are high stakes at places, but you never feel like really tense about it or anything. And to me, it feels a little bit like watching Star Trek Next Generation, in the sense that you're watching it, you know, like that everything's going to turn out okay in the end 90% of the time. To be fair, they do have a couple of really sad episodes, but you know generally that everything's going to be fine, everything's going to turn out wonderfully, everybody's going to end up happy. There's going to be like some conflict and things like this, but it does all work out in the end, which I really enjoy, and it just felt like I was being hugged while I was reading this, which is exactly the same way I felt when watching Star Trek Next Generation. I don't know if anybody else will like get what I mean with that, but trust me, this book is very comforting to read. And then if we're talking also about like slice of life and this kind of thing, I've also got to mention Heartstopper, which is a romance, but we are also dealing with school kids growing up and this kind of thing. It's very much a coming of age story. I read this at the beginning of the year and had such a good time reading it. I was in love with reading about Nick and Charlie and everything else to do with this book. It felt like such a hug to read it. It gave me all warm and fuzzy feelings inside, to say the least, and I can't get enough of it now. I cannot get enough of Heartstopper. It covers some very serious topics in there, like homophobia, coming out, being outed, like eating disorders, and like mental health stays and things like this, but it's done in a really nice, slightly more gentle way, while also really being quite hard-hitting. But it just feels like you're being hugged, and you know that everything's going to turn out okay in the end in a lot of ways, which is just reassuring. And again, it just made me feel like I was being hugged in a lot of ways. Then I've also got The Whale Watchers by Dougie Poynter. I'm not gonna lie, I am a little bit biased towards this one because Dougie Poynter is in McFly, and that is my favourite band of all time, hence why I have 5 colours in my hair and half my jewellery is dedicated to them and everything else. But I am such a Dougie fan, so I'm a little bit biased here. But this is all about 2 boys who spend their summer with their mum by the sea, and then a whale gets stuck and they have to try and sort of save it essentially. And it's also talking a lot about like plastic and climate change and this kind of thing, and I feel like this is a really good one if you are looking for a book that gives hope to people who are really scared and really nervous about climate change and things like this, because it talks a lot in here about even the smallest things can make a difference in the world and can really make huge impacts on the environment just by changing a few small things that we do. There's also resources at the end as well, to do with like like what you can do to help, organisations that are helping, careers you can go into as well, this kind of thing, and then also like changes you can make, all of the rest of it, all while being wrapped up in a really, really comforting story as well. So if you do know someone who is quite like nervous about climate change or anything else, definitely give them this, because it is a really comforting read and I did feel hopeful afterwards. There's also the Double Trouble Society. Again, I am biased here because I'm a massive fan of Carrie Hope Fletcher. I've been following her since like the beginning of her YouTube channel, so like I am a big fan of hers, so I am a little bit biased, but this did again feel really quite comforting to read, because it's just about two best friends as they're trying to discover like what's happening next door, and if there is a witch then, trying to maybe stop the witch, this kind of thing. But it is also about like friendship and just like solving mysteries and all the rest of it, and while there are quite high stakes, it still feels quite cozy, you know. It's more like a cozy middle grade fantasy in a lot of ways, which is really good fun. And then were there illustrations in here? Yes, there are at the beginning of each of the chapters. You've got illustrations at the beginning of each of the chapters, which is also just really nice to see. I really loved all of the nice little illustrations throughout here as well, which was just really good fun, and it's just generally a really good fun time. If you want something really light and really quick to read, definitely give this one a go, because it definitely worked for me. For something a little bit different, there's also Spy X Family. This one I absolutely love. This is a manga all about a spy who, for a mission, needs to have a family, so he ends up marrying this woman and adopting a child without realising that the woman is an assassin and the child can read minds. The assassin doesn't know he's a spy either, and she doesn't know the child reads minds. Meanwhile, the child knows everything, essentially, and it's just about them trying to do their jobs, trying to live their lives, while also becoming like a family and this kind of thing. And it is a really, really sweet, really, really cute, really, really funny, like, adventure, essentially. I have such a good time reading this. Whenever a new volume comes in at my library, I get so excited, because I'm just like, oh, I know this is going to be a really, really good time, because it is just that little bit ridiculous. There are high stakes again, but most of the time you are just watching this like really, really competent spy trying to be a dad, essentially, and just sometimes it goes wrong. Essentially, a lot of the time it goes wrong, but it all works out in the end. Meanwhile, while the wife is also trying to be a mum and a good wife and all the rest of it, while also trying to be an assassin, and the daughter is just trying to live her life while also living out her own spy dreams, because she really wants to be a spy, essentially. It's just really good fun. It's light, it's funny, I end up smiling the whole way through as I'm reading this, and I just have the greatest time. And finally, I have B.B. Alston's Amari series. I've read the first two in this series and really, really love both of them, and this very much reminds me of my childhood in a lot of ways, because it gives a lot of Men in Black vibes, and my childhood was spent watching a lot of Men in Black, I'm not gonna lie, and this definitely gives those types of vibes again, in the sense that we are dealing with this agency that deals with these types of alien and supernatural creatures and this kind of thing as well. And we're dealing with a new girl who's just come into this, she's just finding out about all of this kind of thing, and also trying to essentially stop like the bad guys and this kind of thing throughout here. It's quite whimsical in a lot of places, but I didn't really mind that too much. I'm not usually one for whimsy, but it really works for me in this one. And I just generally really, really enjoy this. I don't know if it's comforting to anybody else, because I know that Men in Black vibes are very, very specific to me. I don't know if anybody else has that. I don't know. If you do, comment that down below. I'd love to know. But I just generally really, really enjoy this series. It brings me a lot of joy, and it just makes me happy to read, essentially. And that is what I want in a comfort read. But I think that's why I'm going to leave this video, because, to be honest, a lot of the other books I want to mention are more like personally comforting to me, because they're like Good Omens, House of M, Marvel 1602, that kind of thing, and I wanted this to be a little bit more like general comforting vibes. So that's where I'm going to leave this video. Also, my camera battery is flashing at me, so I'm going to wrap this up quickly. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up, comment down below, tell me a book you find really comforting, I'd love to know. Or if you don't have that much time, leave me a witch emoji down below to let me know that you're here. I'll also leave a link as well down below to all my social media if you want to check it out, including to the Comic Book Sanctum, which is my website dedicated to Marvel Comics, which talks a lot more about like that universe, which I find very, very comforting in a lot of ways. Or as well, if you want to check out my bookish merch, I'll leave a link down below as well to my Etsy store, so you can check that out. Or if you just want to see any more of my videos, please click subscribe here, and over here will be the link to my previous video. But until next time, everyone, bye!